Good morning. My name is Britta Dorsey, and I am a cataloger at Thorntown Public Library. The first part in today's roundtable is merging records, and I will be going over that with you. Monica Boyer will be going over transferring volumes and copies in the second part. The merge function allows you to eliminate duplicate bibliographic records. You select the best record or the lead record, and the holdings and any patron holds from the other records are transferred to the lead record selected. The records which were not selected as the lead are deleted from the catalog. There are a couple pros and cons to this. Some pros: the catalog is less congested, and holds are more likely to be fulfilled in a timely manner where there are more copies to choose from. A couple cons: it can cost the consortium money. Once we begin sending out records for authority control, we pay per record, and having duplicate records means we'll be paying more than once for essentially the same record. Also, if merging is done incorrectly, items end up on the wrong record and they will have to be moved, which causes more work for us catalogers. To merge records in Evergreen, we use the record buckets. Record buckets are virtual containers used for batch processing of bibliographic records. This is a screenshot of the record buckets. We'll be using the live version in a little bit, but I wanted to give you a quick idea on what the screen you'd be working with the most looks like. We will not go over all of the features. We will only use the features that are relevant to merging. When in doubt, do not merge. If you have any question about if a record should be merged, just leave it be. It's better to not merge at all than to merge something that should not have been merged. Some of the rules you want to keep in mind: we will use the same criteria for matching records to be merged that you would use to copy catalog an item. So if these fields are present in the records, they must match. So of course we have the LC control number, the ISBN, the 024, 028, title, edition statement, publication or distribution, physical description, and contents. The matching details for each field. Each field has a must match or a may match, and there are exceptions to the rules. And all of this information can be found in the Cataloging Procedures Guide of Chapter 2. And we have useful links at the end of this for you if you need them. Some exceptions are scholastic books. These are often republished books that were originally published by another company for the purposes of distributing inexpensive reading material to children and young adults. These books are often identical to their original versions and have the same pagination and the same publication and or copyright date. Scholastic books often feature a different ISBN than what was on the original version. Catalogers may add their holdings for a scholastic version of a book to the record or merge with the original version despite the difference in publisher and ISBN, as long as the publication date and all of the description in the 300 field matches the book. When you merge these types of records, make sure you add the scholastic ISBN to the lead record. Another exception would be library and trade audiobooks. They are usually identical except for the ISBN, publisher or distributor, and packaging. You can merge with the original record if everything else matches. You'll definitely want to remember to add the 028 and the 020s for your edition. So when you merge the library and trade audiobook records, make sure whichever is the lead has both the ISBNs and the 028s from each record. One more exception that we'll go over is the variations in publishers' names. They can be republished under subsidiaries of publishers. There is a list in the procedures of some of the more well-known subsidiaries and publishers. So you can add to the original record if there is a known connection and the records match. Some tips to remember while you're merging. When you are merging a lot of records into one, adding records to the buckets from the bucket manager will allow you to highlight and add a lot of records to your bucket at once, rather than searching and viewing each record individually in the catalog. You can open the bucket manager in one tab and keep a separate tab open in Evergreen for searching for records and adding them to your bucket. You will likely find it useful to be able to go back and forth between your search screen, record screens, and bucket screens when merging. Another tip is search under alternate spellings. Other records may have commonly misspelled words that will keep them from coming up with the rest of the records. And also, searching by title or author while using the record bucket module will yield more results. If a record doesn't have an ISBN or the ISBN includes hyphens, they may not show up when you search for a specific ISBN. So now we are going to go live into Evergreen. Okay, there are two ways you can add records to a bucket, through the catalog and through the record buckets module. While adding through the catalog works well, adding records directly through the module is more effective. You can work on multiple records quickly by utilizing the tools available in the record buckets, but we'll go over both ways to do it. So adding records to a bucket via the OPAC, you search for the records you want to add to a bucket. So we'll just search for The Help by Catherine Stockett. And then once you find the record that you want, you open it and then go to Actions for this record and then Add to Bucket. Now this will allow you to add to an existing bucket, or to you can add a new bucket from here as well. So we'll go ahead and add it to a new bucket as Roundtable. Okay, and then it automatically adds it to the bucket. So if you already have the record buckets module open, you will need to refresh it before the new bucket appears in the list. We're going to add records to the bucket via the record buckets module now. From the splash screen, you can click on record buckets at the bottom of the central column, or click on cataloging and then manage record buckets. The bucket view will load first. You can either choose a bucket you've already made from the drop-down list, or click on bucket actions and select new bucket. Once your bucket is selected, you can click on the Record Query tab, and this is where you will search for the records. The query box is where you will enter your search terms, whether it's the ISBN, title, author, etc. The Help button on the right side of the screen shows search keys you can use to help narrow down the search. So we are going to search for End of Act 3 by Gilbert Morris. Now, as you can see, we have 6 hits with this title, and I will organize it by ISBN, and this is a quicker way to, if you want to check to see if there's the same ISBN. So as you can see from here, we have a lot of these look different. However, the bottom one, the 2454, and this one are the same. Even though there are hyphens, it's still the same record. If all the records in the results are possible matches, you can click on Add All to Pending Records. This will move all of the records that are visible, whether there are 6 or 100, into the Pending Records screen. If they're only a select, you want to highlight them, and you can do that by clicking on it and then holding down the Control button and clicking on multiple ones, and then Add Selected to Pending Records. And this will automatically move them to the Pending Records screen. From Pending Records, you can either further refine the records to be added by selecting records and clicking on Add Selected to Current Bucket, or you can Add All to Current Bucket. We can look further into the record when we add them to the bucket. One of the good things about the bucket view, or when we are merging, is it allows us to check the records side by side. So even if they do have like a different pub date, or maybe even like a different edition statement, this will allow you to check to see if they are actually the same or if they are separate. So we will go ahead and add it to the bucket view, just so we can check to see if they are the same. So I will click on Add All to Current Bucket, and this will add all of the records and the pending records to the bucket view. So we'll switch over to the bucket view, and so here are the 2 records. And then at this point, you can also remove any of the titles that may not be a duplicate at this point, or, excuse me, you can wait until viewing the records and merge all records. So we are going to go ahead and review the records by clicking Merge All Records, and this does not merge the records right now. This just allows you to view the records. So as you can see, since we only have 2 records, they are viewable on the screen completely. The records in the bucket will open in a new tab, and we recommend only merging a few at a time, as you will need to scroll between records depending on the size of your screen. If the records match using the copy cataloging criteria, you can select the lead record. We can see that the only difference in these records is the pub year. It's like we have a matching ISBN minus the hyphens. We have the same author, title, series information, pagination, and so that is good. However, since there is a different pub date, they may not necessarily be an actual match. This would be a good example of not having to merge. One of the good things is once you are in the merge, you still don't have to merge. You can always cancel or remove from consideration if you have multiple copies or multiple records in the bucket. So let's go ahead and cancel. And I have a couple others. So another one that we can look at is Love Takes Wing by Jeanette Oak. I've gone ahead and added them to the record bucket, and at a cursory glance, they look the same. They have the same ISBN, they have the same publication date and publisher. So let's go ahead and take a look at at all of the records. So I will go ahead and click on Merge All. And then they all come up together. And you can see here, they all have the same LC number. They have the same ISBN. And you'll have to scroll down. And view them each individually. Now, once you've decided that all 3 are a match, the next step is to decide which record you want as the lead. Now we can see a couple of these, or 2 of these records are not the greatest. Because we have 440 field for series, and over here, like in the middle, we have the 490, which is correct. So if you agree with me, I would choose this one as the lead record. It has all of the information we need, has the 520 field, and it does not need any editing. So to choose the lead record, you click the radio button next to lead record at the top, and then when you are ready and you are sure this is what you want, you click merge. And what will happen is it will refresh into the catalog, and will go to the main, or to the record that you chose as the lead. And it just shows all of the merged holdings, and any patron holds will have transferred over as well. I will give you a note. If you edit a record in the merge window, you cannot resize the individual record sections to access the save button if you edit the record. So we'll say here, See, it's right here. This is the save button, but you can't reach it really. There is a way around this, though. You can click on the validate button and then hit the tab, and that will highlight the save button, and then you can hit enter. And then that way it'll save any changes you make in the record. Okay, there is a little bit of mismerge etiquette that I wanted to go over. You regularly want to check your email and monitor the Evergreen and cataloging listserv for information. Failure to correct catalog mistakes adversely affect your library, its staff and patrons, and the consortium as a whole. So it's always good to keep track of any emails sent out through the listserv. The contact list is periodically updated and currently can be located on Google Drive. We do have a link available for you. When you identify a mismerge, check to see if the mismerge was caused by duplicate ISBNs or UPCs in the record. You can delete any unique identifiers that are not relevant to the format you have in hand. If you determine that you have a situation in which two different records share duplicate ISBNs or UPCs, remember to use a subfield Z per the instructions in Chapter 3 of the Procedures Guide. If holdings contain multiple formats on one record, but the majority is one type, you want to edit the record to match the majority holdings. And then you'll want to alert the libraries using the listserv or the contact list. It is possible to unmerge items as long as it's caught within a certain time frame. You will need to submit a help desk ticket with information about the record to have it unmerged. All right, that is all for merging records.
Good morning, everybody. This is Monica Boyer. Thank you to Britta for covering merging. I am going to talk to you about transferring volumes and items. This is a pretty basic topic, but occasionally we've seen some items that haven't been transferred properly. So we just wanted to give you a refresher. When you're transferring or moving volumes and items from one record to another, or from one branch to another if you have multiple locations, it can be helpful when a new library comes on during a migration and items get attached to the incorrect record. You need to know how to transfer items and volumes then. Also, as Britta mentioned, sometimes there will be emails on the listserv about mismerged records, and again, that's a good time for transferring volumes and items. And if you have multiple locations, sometimes you decide you want one of your locations to own an item and not the other one, so you want to be able to transfer them between your individual locations. There is a little bit of a difference between transferring a volume versus transferring an item. When you transfer the volume, you are taking the call number. The call number and volume are somewhat can be used interchangeably in this sense, and you're taking the call number and all the items that have that particular call number at that particular location, and you're transferring the call number and all those items to a different record or location. Items, on the other hand, you're just taking the one specific item with the one specific barcode, not everything with the same call number, just the specific item, and that will be transferring just that one thing. It is important to follow the procedures that we're going to talk today when you're trying to transfer volumes and items. You should never delete an item and then re-add it to the catalog just so you can move it to a different volume or a different record. This causes problems because you lose circulation statistics. Any of the circs that it had before you deleted it have been lost. It can also create confusion in the future with reporting and various other things. So you never want to delete the item and then re-add it just so you can move it. And then the other thing, just a quick tip before we get into Evergreen, if you're transferring items between either a different record or just different locations, there must already be the call number there that you want. You can't just move the item, you have to have a call number there. So I'm going to show you how to do that, but it's something to keep in mind. So we're going to go into Evergreen and transfer a few things. This record, Captain Disaster, if we look at this record further down, we can see that this is the fourth one in the Squish series. Unfortunately, my library and some other libraries have Volume 7 attached to this. So I'm going to transfer some of these today because obviously our number Volume 7 doesn't belong on this record for Volume 4. So this is where we're going to be transferring from. And then I want to transfer it to Volume 7 record. And this is Volume 7, Deadly Disease of Doom. Okay, so the thing about when you transfer volumes and items in Evergreen, instead of starting, okay, well, first of all, we're going to be working in the holdings maintenance screen in both of these. So we want to go to actions for this record and look at holdings maintenance. And you can see my 4 locations, and that 2 of my locations have items, some of which are correct and some of which are not. And then in the other record, we want to look at the holdings maintenance as well, which we don't have any holdings on. So what I started to say, the thing about working in Evergreen when you're transferring items and volumes is that instead of starting with what you want to transfer, like this has my Volume 7s that I need to move, instead of starting here, you have to start with where you want them to go, which in this case, I want them to come to this record. And you want to highlight it, highlight the library that you're going to be moving it to. We're going to move Seymour's copy first. So I'm going to highlight the Seymour library. Please note, I do have 4 locations at my library. Some of you only have 1 location, but you still have to select the specific library location to do this. It also might be necessary, depending on your view and holdings maintenance, to go up here and click on Hide Empty Volumes. If that is checked, you may not see your library there. So be sure that's unchecked. So you highlight the item that, or the library that you want to transfer your volume to. First, we are starting with transferring a volume between 2 separate records. So I'm going to transfer my volume here to Seymour. You're going to highlight it, and then you can either right-click on it, or you can go to Actions for Selected Rows, and you are going to mark this library as the volume transfer destination. And you will get a confirmation that this worked, and you just say OK. Now you go back to the one that you actually want to transfer. So back here, I have my Volume 7 in Seymour. I want to move that to Seymour on the other record. We are going to move the whole volume, which means that we are going to move this volume that has this call number, Volume 7, and all the items with it. In this case, this volume only has 1 item, but if this volume had 5 items, they would all be moved to the same record when we do what we're about to do. So we highlight it, and again, right-click or Actions for Selected Rows, and we are going to transfer the volumes to the previously marked library. The previously marked library is on a different record, but it's still there, so we will do that. It will give me a confirmation screen before it actually does it and says, is this really what you want to do? It wants to know if you want to transfer the volume or call number, and it's at the very top, Juve Graphic Novels, Squish Volume 7. If I want to transfer it to JCPLS, which is my Seymour library, on this particular record. You can look at this record, you can see this is not a whole lot of information. If you want to verify, you can see the title by stretching out the window. And you can also view the mark by clicking on this highlighted tab here. And you say, yes, this is the record that I want to move it to. You think that should be fine because you already selected this, but you do need to remember that if any time in the session previously you have marked a volume to be your destination library, it will still be in Evergreen. Evergreen remembers that. So if you did that earlier this morning and then decided not to transfer, that one from this morning is still your destination. And so you want to be sure when this confirmation screen comes up that you are actually transferring to the correct title and record that you need. But this is the correct one, so I'm going to transfer it. and it will say volumes transferred. And this is the record that the item came from, and you'll see now I only have the one volume in Seymour, so that worked. And then if I go back to my other record, it still shows it's blank, but if I refresh it, it will show that I moved that volume to this record. So that is how we transfer a volume between two separate bibliographic records. I also want to show you how to transfer just between branches on the same record. This is very similar, but there's just a lot less going back and forth between tabs. Killer Honeymoon here. You can see from our holdings maintenance screen that my library has a copy of this at our Crothersville branch, but I want to make this copy, I want to move it to my Seymour, my main library. So this works the same as before, we're just not going to be going back and forth between tabs. So I want to make Seymour we still have to start with the destination library. Seymour is going to be the destination, so I'm going to highlight it in Actions for selected rows and click Mark Library as Volume Transfer Destination. And we will confirm it. And then I go up here and select the volume, again the call number, so that it has the item under it. I want the call number and volume level. I'm going to right click and transfer the volumes to the previously marked library. Again, I get a confirmation. It says it's Killer Honeymoon. I want to do this call number to Seymour, which is correct, so I want to transfer it. It will say that, and this one will automatically update, and now that item, that volume belongs to the Seymour library instead of the Crothersville library. So that's transferring volumes. I also want to discuss transferring items, which is very, very similar, but again, like in this last one that is still on the screen, Killer Honeymoon, we transferred the volume, so it took this and everything under it to Seymour. Now we are going to be transferring items, which would mean that I'm just going to, in this case, I would just transfer this particular barcode. So if there were other items there, they would still stay, but this one would move. So we're going to transfer a few items also. Okay, we're back to Captain Disaster because, as I mentioned, both my Seymour and my Discovery Bus, my bookmobile, had Volume 7 on this Volume 4 thing. So now we're going to move the Discovery Bus's copy to the Volume 7 record, but we're going to do it a little bit differently than we did the first time, just so I can demonstrate moving an item. So again, you start with the record that you want it to be destined for. So this is the Deadly Diseases of Doom, Volume 7. This is the one we need to move. So looking at my holdings maintenance, I'm going to be moving our bookmobile or our Discovery Bus copy. So our Discovery Bus is here. But as I mentioned earlier, and I told you we'd talk about this, that you can't transfer an item if there's not already a volume there. Well, you can see that my Discovery Bus doesn't have a volume for this. So in order to transfer an item there, and just the item, I need to have a volume there. So I'm going to add a volume by highlighting the location, right-clicking, and hitting Add Volume. We're going to put in a new call number for this new volume. And just that, because we're not creating a new item, so we don't need to put in a barcode. We're just creating a call number, which is the volume. So we are going to create with defaults. You can see that my Discovery Bus now has an empty volume. It has a call number with no items attached. So now we can use this volume as our destination. So I'm going to right-click on the volume, and I am going to mark the volume as the item transfer destination, which is similar to what we did before, but the wording is a little different because it's more narrow. So I have marked the volume as the item transfer destination. And I want to go back over here. I want to take my Discovery Bus copy, that is Volume 7, and I'm going to transfer just this item with this barcode to that volume. So I'm going to right-click and transfer items to previously marked volume. And again, I'm going to get a confirmation screen. Again, you can't see a whole lot, but if you stretch out this box, you can. You can say this, I'm going to the deadly disease of doom, which is what I wanted. And it says it is going to transfer my bookmobile copy to this volume on this record. Make sure you've got the right volume, make sure you've got the right title. You can hit view mark if you need to, but this is correct, so we're going to hit transfer. And it says it transferred. So you hit OK, and you'll notice that that volume 7 on my Discovery Bus is gone, but so is the call number, not just the item, the call number, because I moved the item, so then that left that volume being empty, and since the volume was empty, Evergreen deleted it. So now you've cleaned up this, and if you go back to where you actually want it to live and you refresh it, now that item has been moved to the Discovery Bus under that volume. Now we're, much like we did with the volumes, we are going to move an item just between the same record instead of moving it to a whole different record. So my library system currently has one copy of this book at our Medora branch. I want to move it to our Seymour branch. But if I'm going to move just the item, again, there needs to be a volume at the Seymour branch, and there's not. Now, if this was something else and you already had one at your Seymour branch and you just wanted more copies at your Seymour branch, then there would already be a call number there and you could just transfer them very easily. But in this case, you need one. So we are going to add another volume, just like we did a minute ago. And again, just the call number here. And again, you're not going to put in a barcode. Create with defaults, and you can see that now I have an empty volume in Seymour, so now there is a destination for the item that I want to move to Seymour. So I am going to mark this volume as the item transfer destination, and then I'm going to choose the item. Again, this is just like what we did before, only I'm not going back and forth between tabs. Choose the item and transfer the item to the previously marked volume. And it will tell you that it's transferred, and it will refresh, and now that item belongs to Seymour. One last thing that I want to show those of you who have multiple locations, what I find to be the easiest way of transferring items just between your branches is in item status. This won't work for transferring between records, so those of you with single locations, this won't help. But those of you who want to transfer items between your multiple locations, this is really easy. All you need to do is put your item into item status. So I've entered Seasons of Tomorrow. You can also do this at a whole bunch at once in a batch. So if you have several things, a whole collection or something that you need to move from one location to another, you can put them into item status and highlight them all, and then do what we're about to do, and you can change the location of a bunch of items at once. So you want to highlight it, and then you'll either right-click or Actions for Selected Items and go to Edit Item Attributes. And in here, you will want to change both your circulation library and your owning library. So the circulation library, in this item, I am wanting to move this one to my Seymour branch as well. So I need to go down here and find Seymour Main Library, be sure to apply it, go down to the owning library, select the same library that you're going to move it to, so Seymour, and apply that. And you'll modify your copies, and it will refresh your item. And you can see that now my circulation library was Crothersville, and now it's Seymour. So now I transferred that without going back and forth to the bibliographic records, and it was very simple. So we just wanted to show you remind you how to do some transfers and stuff, but remind you, please do what we did today. Do not delete an item just so you can add it to another record or another volume. And that's the end of my transferring talk. These are helpful links that Britta put together, some things that might be useful to you, and talking about what we talked about today. But we will be glad to take some questions on either Britta's talk on merging records and buckets or mine on transferring. I'm glad you brought this up because this problem is not something that I had thought about when I was putting my presentation together. My library, since we've started in Evergreen, my library has used the same shelving locations at all of our different locations. For instance, you said that you use Fiction LB or something like that for your branch, but my adult fiction is the same shelving location, whether it's at my main branch or one of my other branches. So for me, what I did in item status is simple, and I only have to change the owning library and the circ library. But for you, you probably do have to change the shelving location, and I think that there are other libraries out there like yours that do use different shelving locations at different branch locations, in which case they would need to do that. In short, what I demonstrated during the roundtable is good for people who use shelving locations where they use the same shelving location at all branches. And Sarah, yes, we are using the system level. And Anita, I'm not aware of any issues that causes. It's great for. I mean, for me, from the staff perspective, it's great, and I'm not aware that it causes any patron problems.